The Midnight Legacy. The summer of 1973 baked Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, like a forgotten loaf in a cast-iron oven. The town sat tucked between the Allegheny Ridges, its single main street lined with faded brick storefronts that still bore the scars of the Great Depression and the fresh wounds of the gas crisis. President Nixon's face scowled from every newspaper rack outside Hank's General Store, where the price of regular unleaded had climbed past 50 cents a gallon and folks muttered about Arab sheiks and Watergate tapes. Sarah Thompson drove her mother's old 1968 Chevrolet Impala down Route 119, with the windows rolled down, the radio crackling out "Stairway to Heaven" between bursts of static. The car smelled of vinyl seats warmed by the sun and the faint ghost of her mother's lavender talcum powder. She was 28, newly orphaned, and returning to the only home she had ever known after burying her mother in the Catholic cemetery on the hill. The house on Pine Hollow Road looked smaller than memory allowed. 2 stories of white-clapboard, green shutters peeling like sunburned skin, and a wraparound porch that sagged under the weight of honeysuckle vines. Inside, the air hung thick with dust motes dancing in shafts of light that sliced through lace curtains yellowed by decades of cigarette smoke. Sarah's father had died in 1965, crushed under a tractor in the back 40, and her mother had never let anyone touch his things. His pipe still rested on the mantel, the bowl stained black. His army dog tags from Korea hung from a nail beside the mirror. Sarah set her suitcase down in the hallway and listened to the silence. Felt alive, watchful. That first night she slept in her childhood room under the sloped ceiling, the one with the faded posters of the Beatles and a plastic model of the Apollo rocket her father had bought her the year before he died. The house creaked in the way old houses do, but around 2 in the morning the telephone on the nightstand rang. A black rotary beast with a heavy handset and a coiled cord that smelled of Bakelite. Sarah jolted awake, heart hammering. Who would call at this hour? She lifted the receiver. "Hello!" A crackle of static, then a voice, low and rough like gravel under tires. Sarah Bear. She froze. Only her father had ever called her that. He had been dead 8 years. Dad! A soft chuckle, the same one she remembered from when he would swing her up onto his shoulders after church. The pines are whispering again, "Sweetheart." They remember what we tried to forget. The line went dead. Sarah sat in the dark, receiver still pressed to her ear, listening to the dial tone that eventually turned into an angry beep. She told herself it was a dream, or maybe some cruel prank from kids in town who knew she had come home. She hung up and did not sleep again until dawn bled pink across the ridges. The next morning she walked into town for groceries, her bell-bottom jeans swishing against the cracked sidewalk. Willow Creek had not changed much. The same barbershop pole spun outside Pete's Cuts. The same green and white awning over the 5 and dime where she had once bought penny candy. But faces had aged. Mrs. Kowalski at the post office squinted at her through cat-eye glasses. "Little Sarah Thompson? Lord, you look just like your mother the day she married that no-good farmer." Sarah forced a smile and bought stamps she did not need. At Hank's she loaded a cart with bread, milk, and a 6-pack of Tab Cola because the radio said it was the new diet craze. Hank himself, a burly man with mutton chop sideburns and a perpetual cigarette behind his ear, rang her up. "Heard you got a call last night," he said without looking up. Sarah's hand tightened on the carton of eggs. "How on earth?" "Party line, darlin'." Mrs. Abernathy down the road heard the whole thing. "Said it sounded like your daddy." He slid the bag across the counter. "Folks round here still talk about that tractor accident. Never did find the brake line, did they?" Sarah left the store faster than she intended, the paper bag crinkling against her hip. Back home, she sat at the kitchen table and stared at the telephone. It did not ring. She spent the afternoon going through her mother's papers in the roll-top desk, yellowed insurance forms, letters from cousins in Scranton, a faded photograph of her father standing beside the old John Deere, grinning under a straw hat. On the back, in her mother's spidery handwriting, Harold, 1964. Don't ever forget. That night, the phone rang again at 2:17 a.m. Sarah answered before the second ring. Sarah Bear. The voice was closer now, as if the speaker stood just outside the bedroom door. The sheriff lied, "Sweetheart, the Pines know. Go look under the third board from the left in the root cellar. Bring a flashlight. And don't tell Jack." Jack. Deputy Jack Harlan, her high school sweetheart who had joined the force instead of going to Vietnam. She had not spoken to him since the funeral. The line clicked dead. Sarah's palms were slick. She found the heavy-duty flashlight her father had kept in the mudroom, its lens still polished, batteries fresh because her mother had been meticulous. The root cellar door stuck at first. The wood had swelled with years of damp. She wrestled it open and descended the creaking stairs into a cool, earthy dark that smelled of potatoes and old burlap. The beam cut through cobwebs thick as yarn. She counted boards from the left wall, third one. It lifted easily, as if someone had loosened the nails long ago. Beneath it lay a metal ammo box, the kind soldiers brought home from Korea. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a bundle of papers and a small reel-to-reel tape recorder, the kind newsmen used in 1965. Sarah carried everything upstairs and spread it on the kitchen table under the hanging bulb. The papers were carbon copies of police reports dated October 12, 1965, the day her father died. The official report said mechanical failure, but these pages, typed on the sheriff's own stationery, told a different story. Subject Harold Thompson discovered brake lines severed with what appears to be a hunting knife. No fingerprints. Suspect interview with local landowner Elias Crow inconclusive. Elias Crow, the richest man in the county, owner of the lumber mill that had employed half the town until it closed in '68. Sarah remembered him from childhood picnics. Tall, silver-haired, always smiling like a wolf in Sunday best. The tape recorder had one spool left. She threaded it with trembling fingers, pressed play. Her father's voice filled the kitchen, clear as the day he left for the fields. "Elias, if you're listening to this, I know what you did to the McAllister girl in '58. I saw you drag her into the pines. I kept quiet because you paid me, but the money's gone and my conscience ain't. I'm telling Sarah everything when she turns 18. If anything happens to me, she'll find this box. The sheriff's in your pocket, but the pines remember every scream." The tape hissed to the end. Sarah sat frozen, the kitchen clock ticking like a heartbeat. 1965. She had been 13. Her mother had wept for weeks, then never spoken of it again. And now, 8 years later, her dead father was calling from beyond the grave to finish what he started. Sweat poured down his face. The barrel trembled but didn't move. Then, from somewhere deep in his chest, he heard another voice. Not the thing's, not Sarah's. His own. The real one. The one that had carried dying men out of Fallujah and promised their mothers he'd bring them home. No! The reflection flinched. Just a flicker. Elias lunged forward, grabbed the shard of mirror still clinging to the wall, and drove it into his own left palm. Pain, real, honest human pain, flashed through him like lightning. The reflection howled, a sound like tearing metal, and shattered into 1,000 black moths that poured out the window into the night. He bandaged the hand himself at 3 a.m., teeth clenched, whiskey burning the wound. The cut wouldn't stop bleeding for hours. When it finally did, the scar formed a perfect circle with lines inside it. The same symbol from the cave. He knew what came next. The dreams started the following night. Not nightmares, memories that weren't his. He saw the cave from the inside, saw the hole open like an eye, saw the thing that lived there peel itself out of the darkness, wearing the faces of every soldier who had ever died afraid. Fed on guilt, on unfinished business, on the parts of men that refused to die cleanly. And it was still hungry. Elias began preparing. He sold the cabin, bought an old Ford truck with cash, loaded it with everything the army had taught him to kill with. Suppressed rifles, grenades, thermite, a case of white phosphorus he wasn't supposed to have. He also bought books, old ones, cult texts, translations of Sumerian tablets. Anything that mentioned the devourer of echoes or the mirror that remembers. One line from a 14th century Persian manuscript kept him up at night. To kill the copy, you must first kill the original sin that gave it life. He drove east, not home, back to the war. The army had classified the valley after his team vanished, declared it off limits. He didn't care. He crossed into Afghanistan on foot through smugglers' passes, beard grown out, dressed like a local shepherd. The mountains didn't welcome him. They remembered. It took him 9 days to reach the cave. The entrance was exactly as he'd left it, black wound in the rock. But now there were fresh boot prints leading in. Size 12. His size. Dozens of them. All entering. None leaving. He rigged the entrance with claymores and tripwires anyway. Then he walked inside. The tunnel felt shorter this time, like it wanted him there. The symbols on the walls glowed faintly, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. He could hear breathing ahead, 12 sets of lungs, all breathing in perfect sync with his own. The chamber was waiting. The iron chair was still there, and in it sat Elias Thorne, not a reflection. The man himself, older, hollowed out, eyes black and smiling. The thing had taken his face completely now, down to the new scar on his palm. "Hello, Captain," it said with his voice warm and tired. "Took you long enough." Elias raised the rifle. "I'm here to close the account." The copy laughed softly. "You still think this is about bullets?" Cute. It stood. Behind it, the hole yawned wider. From inside came the sound of 12 men screaming in 12 different languages, all begging for the same thing: to be allowed to die properly. "You left us," the copy said. "We waited. We learned. Every regret you carry, every promise you broke, we wear them now. We are the better soldiers. We don't feel fear. We don't hesitate. We just finish." Took one step forward. Elias fired. The round punched through the copy's chest and kept going into the darkness. The thing didn't fall. Kept walking. "You can't shoot guilt," it whispered. Elias dropped the rifle, pulled the thermite grenade from his vest. "Maybe not, but I can burn the evidence." He yanked the pin. The copy's smile faltered for the first time. "Wait!" Elias slammed the grenade into his own chest and hugged the thing that wore his face like a brother. White-hot fire bloomed between them. The copy screamed with 12 voices at once. Ruiz, Kowalski, Saint, Ghost, all of them. Elias screamed too, but his was human. Honest. The last honest thing he would ever do. The thermite burned through both of them, through the chair, through the floor. The hole shrieked, a sound like the universe tearing. Elias felt the presence try to pull away, but he held on, fingers melting into its shoulders, refusing to let go until the fire had eaten everything it could reach. The cave began to collapse. He was still holding the burning copy when the roof came down. The last thing he saw was his own face staring back at him from inside the flames. Eyes no longer black, but terrified. Human. The reflection finally cracking. Then darkness. They never found his body. The valley was declared a permanent no-go zone after seismic readings showed an underground collapse the size of a small town. The army listed Captain Elias Thorne as Kia, body unrecoverable. They gave him another medal, His family got a folded flag and a letter that didn't mention caves or copies or things that wore dead men's sins like winter coats. But sometimes, late at night, hikers in the Colorado Rockies report seeing a lone soldier standing on a ridge, staring east. He never approaches. He never speaks. If you get close enough, you can see the circular scar on his left palm glowing faintly, like embers that refuse to die. And if the wind is right, you can hear 12 men whispering the same sentence, over and over in perfect unison. We're still waiting. Some nights the whisper is closer. Some nights it sounds like it's coming from inside the listener's own chest. And on those nights, people wake up to find boot prints outside their windows, size 12, leading to the front door and stopping. No exit prints. Ever. Elias Thorne never came home. But something wearing the shape of his regret did. And it is still collecting. The mountains keep the rest. When the sheriff's men arrived, called by a frantic neighbor who heard shots, they found Elias Crow dead at his desk, face frozen in horror, lungs filled with pine needles that had somehow grown inside him. No fingerprints, no footprints, just the ledger, the tapes, and Sarah and Jack standing side by side in the study, pale but alive. The official report called it a heart attack. The town whispered otherwise. Within a week, the newspapers carried the story. Decades-old murder solved by a returning daughter and a dedicated deputy. Crow's estate was seized. The McAllister family finally had closure. Sarah's mother's grave received fresh flowers every Sunday. But on quiet nights, when the wind moves through the pines behind Pine Hollow Road, Sarah still wakes at 2:17 a.m. to the sound of a telephone that no longer exists. She answers anyway, and her father's voice says, soft and proud, "You did good, Sarah Bear. Now sleep." The whispering has stopped. She hangs up, smiles into the dark, and does exactly that. The house creaks once more, the way old houses do when they are finally at peace. Outside, the Allegheny Ridges stand sentinel under a 1973 moon, and somewhere deep in the trees, roots settle over bones that will never be found. The end.